Okay, see everybody starting to come in. We'll kind of chat for a moment here and let everybody get in here before we start. And okay, got quite a few people here. Thanks everybody for coming. It's our Thursday webinar here on June 11th. Been looking forward to this one for quite some time. I've our co-host Ray Phillips has been a friend of mine for 4 or 5 years that we've known each other directly after meeting out at VIR, I think, a couple of times and chatting on email and phone. And Ray has done some is doing some pretty cool things with track maps at plus user profiles and all sorts of stuff that he does with his driver coaching and his teaching efforts inside the AIM software. So looking forward to this one quite a bit. So this one's going to be what we're calling going further with track maps in Ray Studio 2 analysis. Part of our polls that we've been giving, even the one we gave just a couple of days ago, which was right after a track map session, asked for even more information on track maps, and then some feedback I got with some phone calls and emails from folks saying, okay, that was cool, and boy, that was that helps, and we understand a little bit more of how to build these, but okay, now what do we do with them, right? How do we take it to the next step? And Ray seen that even before I did, and we were already chatting about doing something like this. So here we are. So I appreciate Ray doing that. A couple of things that we might just want to take care of as we're getting started. We're going to, of course, be putting out a lot of information for you. Some of this might be new for a lot of you, and so we have a question and answer box up in your little control panel from Zoom. You have a Q&A button there. Make sure you open that and make sure that's set down there. If you want to ask questions of Ray or I during the presentation today to be answered live, make sure you put them in the question and answer box. And then if then we have our AIM staff guys that are Robbie and Brick and Robinson and Emiliano from Italy. Thank you guys for being here today and helping out like you always do. Very powerful tools that they give us. They're going to be maybe answering them, or they will direct them to come to Ray and I, and Ray and I will answer those as we see those. So make sure you ask those in the question and answer box. If you're going to chat, go ahead and chat in the chat box itself. That's also something you can open. I see a lot of you are over there chatting away already. Thank you. That's always great. Down at the bottom of that though, make sure you down at the bottom it always defaults to all panelists. So when you type in a chat, it only goes to the panelists. I see most of you have already clicked this because many of you are here from have been here previously. If you, instead of all panelists, if you pull that down and click on all panelists and attendees, then everybody that is attending this webinar will see that. So make sure you do that. And if you send it just all panelists, just the 5 or 6 of us that are here working in the background will see it. So make sure you do that, and then that'll be great for everybody. So perfect. Those are the couple of things that we're going to do there. One last thing that we almost always do is we start off with a quick poll. I'm going to bring that up now. And as we kind of go through our introductions, I'm going to let that just go in the background. It's what AIM device, what aimsports hardware do you own and use? Select all that apply. Don't just pick them all, obviously. But if you're using one of them, go ahead and select that. Down there at the bottom, we have SmartyCam/other. We're limited on numbers of. We're only limited to 10 that we can put in there. So if you have something that I did not list on the list, go ahead and select that one. And then over in the chat box, other equals, and then whatever it is that you have there. I review those, and we take a look, and we try to make sure that we're focusing this webinar to the folks in what you guys are using. So might be in your way, but when you finish it up, if you hit the submit button, it'll go away. We're going to go through some introductions for Ray here for a minute, and then we'll close that up and go from there. So the next thing that I want to bring up is talk a little bit about Ray. Again, like I mentioned earlier, Ray's somebody that I've known for quite a while. He's very active in this, in the training and creating things for AIM users, and of course as a driver coach and doing different things out there and data engineering. So, Ray, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you to the point where you're living this dream of motorsports and out there working in the field.
Well, it is kind of a dream for me, Roger. Like everyone that's probably on this call, my racing is passion. So anyway, I'm a data engineer, driver coach. I started Precision Driving Analytics in 2015. I use data and video to help my clients go faster. And I love coming up with creative ways to do that. And I'm either focused on what the driver is doing, or maybe there needs to be a setup change with the car to help that driver go faster. So data helps in both those areas. I use a lot of math channels and user profiles in order to help me do this. And by the way, one of my services is to create math channels and user profiles that are custom made for my clients so that they can coach themselves. A little shameless plug there. I use several different software packages, but I've been using AIM for over 20 years. And it's been a huge help to me, both personally driving and for helping others, because a lot of people have AIM products and the AIM software. I'm frequently supporting multiple drivers. So I really need to be able to look at the data very quickly and focus in on something before that next session, you know. And being a club racer, I ran into that as well, because you got to get your car with a setup change, you got to put gas in the car, all these different things. You don't have a whole lot of time to be staring at data. So I'll create user profiles that help me look at the data very quickly. And one of the tools that I use is the track report. And that's the main thing I'm going to be talking about today. It allows me to look at the data very quickly, and you're going to see that. But before we can do a track report, we have to have track maps. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is my process of creating a track map with the different segments.
Perfect. So let me jump into Race Studio 2. Let's, share this and bring this up. So the process you're going to talk about is we started with the other day of building some track maps, and we have some videos that are out there that that you might want to look at from the past. One of them was understanding track maps in the AIM universe. That's that was one where he kind of talked about the AIM uses the word track map in track maps for your GPS manager for the older software, and track maps for loading start finish line coordinates. And then we got the GPS based track map where you can visually see where you're at. And then there's these track maps that we're going to talk about. We talked about it a week or so ago in a how to build the track map, plus the ability here today of then using that and going deeper into studying the data and doing what you just mentioned a minute ago, which is getting good information to yourself or your clients, or that added value of getting some information to the people in a real hurry, getting that where am I on the throttle, how hard have I broke, where did I how did all this happen, some of the stuff that you're going to talk about today, just the real power of multiplying that information you get from track maps. So so what I'm going to do now is give you control of the mouse. Let me select it, and there you go. So if you could explain a little bit, I know you already kind of touched on a little bit, but the whole track report function, and then let's just jump in and start taking a look at them.
All right. Well, actually, I'm going to start with just creating a track map, because
Okay.
I think that's going to lead into the track report function a little bit better. So I've already created a couple of track maps, and generally what I do is I create probably at least 2 track maps for every race event. I usually create one with large segments and one with small segments. And I'm going to explain why I do that as we go through here. So I'm going to look at the large segment one first. So what I'm trying to do here is, which Roger talked about in the previous video about split reports and all this, I want my split to start before the braking starts, and I want it to end after the driver has come out of that corner and has committed to throttle. And I usually like to have it so that the driver's been on throttle for a little bit, because I want to be able to analyze whether or not the driver did something exiting that corner that caused him to get a higher top speed. This is Homestead that we're looking at in Miami. And I do have several, I guess 4 little straights here. And the reason why I like to have those here is because, drafting is very important. And if I have those, then I might be able to tell if the driver was in a draft, in those segments. But you can see I've created some larger segments that join corners. And the reason why I do that is because, the driver can be super fast in this first corner here. I guess this is turn 3, but then be super slow in turn 4. And that's the more important turn, right? Because that leads onto the straightaway here. And then we have turns, I think 13 and 14 here is the same way. So this is a typical large segment map that I would create. If I want to look at small segments, and this is typically what I create here. And you can see I basically have a segment for every corner. And I'm going to talk about why that's important to look at certain bits of information. But let's go ahead and load this. And we're going to look at split reports using both these maps. All right,
so you loaded the short segment one first here. That's the first one we're going to look at. Okay.
That's right, short segment, so small segment. So I'm going to go to the view and split times. All right, so you can see we got a lot of different segments here, and there's really 3 things that I personally focus on quickly when I'm looking at these reports: the best lap, the best rolling lap, and the best theoretical lap.
And as you're doing that, Robbie, if you could throw up a video to our, a few weeks ago, we did a deep dive into split reports, and maybe Robbie can throw that up into the chat report as you're going through this, and folks, you can save that or download that for later viewing as well. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's all right. And this is from a race, so the lap times may not be especially good, because if the car's with other traffic and things like that. And by the way, I did disable the in and out laps. So these 2 laps are disabled because they don't really count towards any good times in the split report. All right, so looking at these 3 things, best lap was a 32 flat, best rolling lap was a 31.5, and best theoretical lap was a 29.5. So I basically want to see if the best rolling lap and the best theoretical lap are achievable, and certainly the best rolling lap is, because the driver's actually done it. It's joining 2 consecutive laps just at some other spot other than the start-finish line. But if I look at the difference in time between the best lap and the best theoretical lap, we're looking at 2.6 seconds. And chances are, because of these corners leading into other corners, that's not achievable. And that's not something I'm really going to zero in on in trying to help the driver go faster. I want to zero in on the things that I know will help that driver go faster. So let's go ahead and switch to the large segment map. That's that one.
You can see real quickly there's less actual splits in the split report as it's regenerating itself.
Right. All right, so now obviously our best lap is the same. Best rolling lap is almost the same. It's a 31.67, but the best theoretical lap is a 30.7. And so that's much closer to that best lap of a 32 flat, only about 1.3 seconds difference. So what I'm typically looking for when I'm looking at these with a large segment map is I want the best rolling lap to be within half a second of the best lap, and the best theoretical lap to be within a second. Okay.
That's really a measure of consistency, right? That's what you're looking for there.
Exactly. So, now as Roger talked about the other videos, I could look at these differences and know exactly where to go, to dig deeper. And something I mentioned on Facebook the other day, I kind of think of split reports as creating your own treasure map. And the better you create it, the more chance you're going to find those golden nuggets of time, so you can really zero in that way. All right. So now that we have our track maps created, I'm going to go over to view. Some things are kind of blocking that. And this is how you get the track report up. I've already created some. And we're going to come back to creating one from scratch, but I have some user profiles created already. And we're going to look to a brake track map. So I'm just going to double click on that. And we have brake pressure as the color channel. Now I'm going to explain all the different features of these track reports. And I will say up front, it can be a little quirky. So you're gonna have to bear with it sometimes, but the information that you can get is really good, and it's fast.
And another thing that I'd like to add here, just so everybody knows, as soon as we finish this and the video goes up on YouTube, down in the description box, in links down in there, some hyperlinks, the data that we're looking at will be available to you, and the user profiles that you're seeing here on the left side. Ray has been nice enough to provide us with a file that's going to give you all of those. So everything you're seeing now, if you want to dive back into the YouTube video after you download the data and the track, the math channels, the data, and of course the user profiles and the two little track maps he built will be downloadable as well. So you could follow along and do everything that he's talking about here later as well. So thank you, Ray, for giving us this information for later.
No problem at all. All right, so one thing you might notice right off the bat is my background is not white. And a lot of people don't realize that almost all the colors in RS2 analysis can be changed. And the way you do that is you go to options, in this case, plot settings, and you can see all the different choices you have here. I look for map background. And if I just click on that, then I'll choose a light gray. I usually like that. A lot of times I'm trying to look at my laptop in the sun, and sometimes that helps for me to see it a little bit better. And these are on the screen, and then you can change the colors in print as well on the right-hand side here. And this is also where you change your default base colors. I personally like black backgrounds. I find it a little bit easier to see, but you can choose either default black or default white. So I've got the gray background for the maps. And if you just right click on the track report window, this brings up a window that basically allows you to change almost everything here.
A pretty busy dialog box, isn't it?
It's a pretty busy dialog box. Here's one quirky thing. I noticed that the channels are not being shown here, even though I have show measures info checked. So I'm just going to uncheck that and recheck it. I'm going to hit apply. And now this information pops up in the right-hand corner. All right, so I'm going to start over here with track representation. The most important channel in my mind is the color channel, and they call it a 3D channel. So this is the channel that's going to change colors on that map. Okay, and you can choose either smooth or bands. I typically use smooth because that allows the colors to kind of blend into each other. And when I'm looking at something like brake pressure or throttle or something like that, I want to see that smooth transition. If you click divide into segments, I'll do that right here. All it's doing is basically giving you the same colors that you would see on if you viewed a track map. So that's not typically something I use here, but there may be a reason that you want to do that. All right, so now it gets a little bit busier. So we've got these notes popping up here, and what I'm showing is GPS speed, and you can see that in the upper right. And I've got a show max button checked as well. If I want to show min, I can check that and apply. And now you're going to have the red arrows going up and blue arrows going down for max and min. Basically, you can choose any channel you want to have shown up here. These cars, this is actually a Ferrari Challenge car. It's got a lot of data channels. Most of these I wouldn't select for this reason, but anyway, GPS speed, RPM might be ones that I do. A reference channel, there's a little box here. It's basically just another channel that you might want to see data on. If you click on the show reference channel, then it's going to provide another part into the notes. So I'll click on that and you'll see it. So now, I mean, it's not meaning much here. Let's choose ECU RPM or something like that. There's RPM. So now the RPMs are showing up at those spots on the map as well. And it's showing up here, you know, and I'm going to exit out. Wherever you click on this map, the values are going to change in the upper right-hand corner. And also the splits are wherever these black lines are, okay? So
those are what you said in the track map when you built the track map, right? This is your large splits, and those little black dashes are the actual segment breaks in the track map you built earlier.
That's correct, yep. And these note boxes show up for every split, okay? So you can see basically there's one for every large segment here, where top speed and RPM. And sometimes they'll be just on the other side of that black line, not right in front or something to that effect. But it still gives you a good idea of where that top speed is. And that's really kind of the purpose of this kind of track report is to kind of give you, say, a 500-foot view of what's happening and give you some ideas of where to dig deeper on it, you know, if you want to go into the squiggly lines and see exactly some more detail. So anyway, we're looking at brake pressure here, and here's another important aspect, and that's how to change the color. So if I clicked on the measures tab over here, so I've got all my channels, and I've got this color chart, and I've got a bar over here on the right that I can change that. Now, I know for a fact that this car, the driver should be at about 1,500 RPMs. Sorry, not RPMs, pressure. When he's hitting the brakes, and you can see, I'm not seeing any red. I've got 1387 to 1541 would be showing up as red, and I'm not really seeing any red. So that's a quick indicator to me that, hey, this driver can be hitting the brakes harder. The other thing that's really apparent to me is that the driver hit the brakes early in the braking zone. It got to 1,098 brake pressure, and then waited and then hit the brakes again, so up to 1,221. So that's a quick indicator to me that, hey, the driver could probably be braking later there and have a smoother release of the brake pedal as he's approaching the apex of that corner.
Yeah, and what's really cool about this is you have some people that just love to look at the strip charts, right? The measures graph, and you see the squiggly lines, and you pick some things out. And then there's others of us that like to learn and see things a little bit more visually. And that breaking into that corner there as soon as you pop it up, everybody can see that there's that yellow piece, and then it goes back to green and then back to yellow, which means that the driver got after the brakes, released, and came back on. This is just such a different way, but yet so powerful of seeing things like that. So I'm glad that you're showing us and everybody just a different way of seeing the same information. Maybe this one works better for you or your different people.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a lot more visual for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of my clients, that really resonates with them. So
exactly, perfect.
So the other thing I want to highlight is, we've got the channels down here, and you all probably can't see the text for GPS speed very well. So I want to change that color, and all I have to do is click on the box here, and let's say I want it to be dark blue. I can say okay to that, and now that's dark blue along with the RPMs. The other thing is next to the channel that we're showing as a measures channel, we've got the min right here and the max. So these two little arrows, one down and one up, is going to show you those notes. And if I deselect them, then all those notes go away. The other interesting thing is this box here is actually the reference channel. So if I unselect that, you've noticed that the RPMs now go away. So if you don't feel like right-clicking and getting that window up, this is a quick way of making those same changes.
And if you click on and go back to the dialog box here, you can, if you are not seeing those when you practice with your data, everybody that's listening, down in the lower left-hand corner, there's a checkbox down there that says add button controls in the measures bar. If you're
Yes.
not seeing those, that's the reason why you're not seeing those. And if you want to add them, just click that button.
Yep, good point. The other thing that's here is it actually tells you which track map you have up. You know, so map name, this is Homestead 2019 large segments. So if for some reason I know which map I was looking at, that tells me right there. So that's the, you know, all the stuff behind these track reports, how to change them, that type of thing. So now we're going to look at some other ones. And by the way, if you don't have brake PSI, you can use longitudinal Gs. So I've got a longitudinal G track map here. And you notice the colors are very similar. And I know that this car will reach about 2 Gs under braking. You know, if for some reason I wanted to change that, I can just pull this down and then say, okay, I want to see anything over 1.3 in red. Now I've done that. And you can see over here in this braking zone, you know, the numbers or the colors changing from, you know, red to yellow back to red. So this little color dealio can be extremely helpful when you're looking at your data on these track reports.
And that little slider bar, being able to adjust these temperature rainbow charts, that's in all of the different functions inside of AIM. So it's in the GPS maps when you colorize those, or here in the track report and other places too. So make sure everybody knows that that bar is there. It's a good tool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to look at a speed track report, because this is probably one that, you know, everybody can look at as well. And again, the colors are going to mean a lot for me here. So this is actually a 7-speed car that'll reach close to 200 miles an hour. So, but on this particular track, we've got, I'm going to change this color again so that you can see it. We'll go with black this time. Top speed, we've got a 138.4 here. So that's why, you know, the system has basically realized that, and it's kind of adjusted for the data that it's gathered. You know, it's looking at mins and maxes and saying, okay, the rainbow chart or bar that I'm going to give you is basically going to go from the min that I'm seeing on this particular lap to the max that I'm seeing on this particular lap, right in that area. So, you know, the min is between 50 and 59 miles an hour. So I can pretty much tell, like, here's 58.3, and then here's 32. So it is going under that 49, but I can also change that if I want. You know, so if I want to go down to the, say, that 30, the colors have changed slightly. So now the 58.3 is more of a turquoise instead of that dark blue. And now I can really see the dark blue as being the slower speed here.
By the way, that scaling that you're seeing in the left there, and AIM does this all through Race Studio 2 analysis. The scaling that you see is all driven by, if you were in a measures graph, you auto double clicked on the scale bar and you had it auto fit the window. That scaling is pulled across virtually every other function. So the reason the numbers popped up in what you were just seeing with GPS speed is because it had been scaled in the measures graph area. So if somebody hadn't done that and left 0 to 320 miles an hour, which is kind of the default, you know, GPS speed if you've never adjusted it, you would have had 0 to 320 here, and you could and you'd have to use the slider bars a little more. So everybody, just so you realize that that's where that scaling comes from, is from the measures graph.
I did not know that. I learned something new here, so
we all
good. All right, so one thing I like to look at with the speed channel is minimum speeds, and not only the minimum speed, but where it's happening. And since I've got this large segment map, there's a couple of corners here that I'm not seeing that, since these notes are coming up once in each segment. So like turn 5 here, I'm not seeing the minimum speed. Turn 13 over here, I'm not seeing it. So now I'm going to switch over to the small track map, small segment track map. Oops, I always do that.
This is so powerful. You so quickly change maps in the background and do exactly it. So if he's sitting there, coaching 3 different people from his team or something, boy, he could just change these really quickly. Very, very powerful tool.
Yeah. All right, so now I'm able to see the min speeds of where I want. And by the way, you can drag these notes if they're in the way or something. Just hold your left mouse cursor down and clicker down and just drag it. So, some of these, as a driver coach, I would immediately say, well, why is the driver hitting his min speed back here? Why isn't it over here? Because I'd really like the driver to be trail braking all the way into that apex.
Perfect.
I know that the driver could be accelerating a little bit earlier here, so I'd probably be looking for this min speed to be back here. Again, I just can quickly really look at this information and have an idea of where I want to go with helping this driver go faster in different areas to work on. So I think this is a very popular one. And again, the colors tell me, all right, well, how fast is this driver going in different areas? It's just real easy for me to see that. All right, next one we're going to look at is a gear track map.
And again, while he's checking that, selecting this, you guys all have the ability. I see Robbie had already put the link to these in the chat box. So Ray has been nice enough to share these, so you'll be able to do these yourself.
Yeah. I see one question is can you have 2 laps at the same time? And the question is absolutely yes. So if I click on 2 laps, now I can compare those 2 laps. I can choose as many as I want.
It starts to get busier.
It starts to get busier, for sure, but it is possible.
Very cool.
All right, so this is a gear track map. This is one where I like to use bands, actually. So I've got bands selected. On this particular track, the driver's only using gears 3 through 6. So I've selected 4 bands, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the colors are changing based on what gear he is in. Okay, so again, it's very easy for me to see, what gear that driver is using in every corner. And the other thing I have here is I have the top speed, but I also have the gear as a reference channel. So that's another way for me to look at it there. Again, this is just a very powerful way to look at the shifting. If I wanted to, I can look at the RPMs. So if I want to do that, right click, and instead of gear as a reference channel, I'm going to choose RPMs, because where the driver shifts and what RPMs is obviously important as well. So now I've got the RPMs here too, and I can click anywhere. So if I want to see what that shift point is, driver shifted at 5,918 RPMs there, or thereabouts.
Very, very, very cool colored graph here where it clearly shows the driver shifts as well. That's nice.
Yeah. All right. So next one we're going to look at is lateral G track map. Oh, sorry. I'm going to create this one from scratch so that you all can see exactly how I do it. So in order to get a clean slate, so to speak, I pulled up the lap compare profile I have, and I'm just going to close that. So now I have a clean slate, and I'm going to go to view, and I'm going to go to track report. Again, I've got this black background that I don't really want. So I'm going to go to options, plot settings, and I'm going to choose light gray. It's right here. Say okay, and okay. All right, so now I got the background the way I want it. I'm going to right click on the map.
Right. Let's just take Tim has a question in the question box. Thank you, Tim. And this is a perfect time to cover it since it's kind of doing it right here. Tim's question: can you permanently change the default of the color channel? I mostly don't care what the logger temperature is. AIM cares what the logger. No, no offense, Roger. Right here is. It does this several places in the software, and this is one of them that I thought this would be a great time to jump in. Sometimes it defaults to a channel, right? And sometimes it's a color, and sometimes it's in different ways. And while I can't tell you exactly, and maybe Emiliano in the back can give us the exact reason, but what I think it always does is it seems to always go to the last channel that's in the configuration of the profile of the actual data test you have. Sometimes it's internal batteries, and most of the time it's logger temperature. So it's triggering on this. Typically, after you select it one time for a particular function you're doing, it will not come back to that. It will always remember the last one you did and the color. So a great question, Tim. And you'll see this, and it's not something we're probably going to change at this point with Race Studio 3 being worked on very hard. But that's why you often get this internal battery or logger temperature is the other two that you almost will see in not just this function, but in many other functions as well. Typically, I think most people see it the first time they bring up a GPS map, and it's trying to colorize it, and it's almost always based on logger temperature or internal battery as far as the color chart on that. So just wanted to cover that one for you, Tim, why we had this box up. Thank you. Right.
Yep. And you can see I've got internal battery here twice.
Exactly, because that's what it selects by default.
Right. So again, I'm not seeing the measures info in the upper right-hand corner. So I'm going to unselect and reselect. I'm going to hit apply. So now I know what I need to look for over here on the left. You know, I've got all these note boxes up here that I don't really want. So I've got a max for combined G. I'm going to unselect that. GPS speed, I've got min and max. I'm going to unselect those. The internal battery, I've got min and max, and I'm going to unselect those. Since we're going to be looking at lateral Gs, I'm going to find the ECU lateral acceleration. You can use GPS lateral acceleration as well. And a lot of times I just create or just have the reference channel equal to the 3D channel. Again, you know, part of my focus is to look at this stuff very quickly. So I don't want to get too wrapped up in a lot of information here. Now I just got to find it. I've probably missed it. Oh, it's right on top. Okay. All right. So now we have lateral acceleration here. And I go to my measures bar and take a look at the range. I've got the red going up to 1.69. The blue is actually going up to 1.67 because it's negative. So, you know, the higher number is actually on the left when it goes negative. So, you know, this gives me a decent representation of what's happening with lateral Gs. But to be honest, I'm not crazy about it because it's too hard for my little mind to figure out, okay, does dark blue correlate to dark orange or dark red or whatever? You know, it's just a little bit too much thinking for me.
You're not so worried about left corners versus right. You just want to know, right, are they using all of the car's lateral G capability? Right. Perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I created a math channel, which takes an absolute value of lateral Gs so that all those numbers will be positive. So if I go over here to modify and math channels, now there's 3 math channels here. We're going to really be looking at 2 of them. But here's my absolute lateral G. So you can see it's just the absolute function, which you can find over here. You know, I'll create a space here in between. And if I double clicked on that, then this is what it'll give you, the absolute value. And then you just plug your channel right in the parentheses there.
Pretty easy one to build.
Yep, pretty easy one to build. All right, so we're gonna map that one. So I'm gonna go back to here and I'm gonna find that math channel. There it is.
Once you build a math channel, it automatically is added to your list of channels. So it's sometimes it's not where you think it might be, but you go look around, you can find it.
Yep. All right. So now it's a little bit easier to look at, right? I'm not concerned with left-hand corners or right-hand corners. I just want to know where the max Gs are and where's the min, actually. So my scale is fixed itself. It's going from 0 to over 1.5. So looking at this, I would immediately ask the question, well, okay, why is the car going in and out of max G's basically here. Same thing in here. And why isn't the driver getting up to more G's here, or over here, or over here? You know, so all those little things, you know, gives me an idea of where to start looking at it to help this driver go faster. You know, so I find this one to be very helpful as well.
There's a question there. Is full scale set too low for this car on the absolute lat G? You did the math channel and maybe we set it to 1.5, but is this car capable of more than that? That's part of the, to rhetorically answer the question. It's the car you're working on. If it is a car that's capable of 1.8, then you do the math channel at the value of that the car can probably do, or what you're searching for, and then the scaling on the left in the measures graph will match the math scaling that the scaling you set in your math channel. So as he opens this up, what you're going to see is if we go to the, there you go. See the scaling on that one is 1.5.
Yes.
That's why the scaling was set as automatically. The software picked up on that, and if you change that to 2 or whatever, and then resave all of this, and I think, will it do it automatically? Yeah, it did it automatically on top of it. So it bumped it up to the maximum value, and now you can see there's only one spot that hits a little bit of red in your map.
Right.
Good question. Thank you, Chris.
That is a good question. And yes, this car is very much capable of going more than 1.5.
I think that was Chris's point on the bigger picture, right? So.
All right. So the next one I'm going to bring up is called a bogging track report, track map. And what I consider to be bogging is if the driver is at greater than, say, 50% throttle, but the car is below a certain RPM threshold that I want the car to be in order to get maximum torque out of a corner, okay? So math channel is a little bit more complicated, but still not overly complicated.
While you're bringing that up, Robbie has I think has a link to a math channel video that we did in the recent past that we'll talk a little bit more about what Ray is going to talk about here in a minute with some more details. So thank you, Robbie, for throwing that up there. Go ahead, Ray.
Yep. All right. So here's my bogging math channel. We're using a greater than and a less than function in here. So here's my greater than. If my throttle position, which in this case is pedal position sensor, that's the PPS, if that's greater than 50%, then look at the RPMs, and if the RPMs are less than 5,000, just give me a 1. Otherwise, give me a 0. And you need this other 0 at the end here because you have two if statements, one nested within the other. So all the map is showing is 0s or 1s. It's strictly binary. Okay. In this case, I actually the threshold that I use is actually 4,000 RPMs, but I raised it to 5,000 just so that you can see some spots where it would show up. So like in this case, the driver, the gear he's in 3rd gear. And if that was something I was really concerned about, then I would say, well, maybe the driver should be at 2nd gear there, So it's a quick and easy way for me to figure out, is the driver using the right gears?
Yeah, very car specific. So if if you're trying to get to certain things, this is a great way of this driver has been having trouble. You may never go to this graph in an entire weekend if you think the driver is doing good on this specific thing. But if you have one driver that tends to really concentrate on that corner because you've told him he wants to be trail braking deeper into the corner from one of the previous graphs, and then he forgets to get in the right gear as he's coming off because he's so busy going in, this is just a great one to come up. And there's not much red here, but where there is, it's a time loss. So it's a great way of visually seeing that.
Right. Roger, I don't think you can zoom in on these maps.
I don't think you can either. And I just glanced over and seen Eric's question, and you cannot on this particular map. No, sorry.
Yeah. All right, so there's another type of map feature that I know has been covered, and that's GPS, the GPS track map, I guess. Let's look at that.
GPS-driven line map, as we call it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to pull this up. I find this to be very powerful too. I'm going to go back to my large segment track map. map manager, and then large segments. I'm going to show you a color feature here that's extremely powerful. So I'm going to go to split times. And I'm going to look at where the driver was much faster in a lap other than his best lap. And you see his best lap only has one best segment time. So if I scroll down here, I see this 0.242, okay? So that's lap 16, and we're gonna compare that to lap 11. So I'm gonna go over here. I got a lap 11 checked. I'm gonna select lap 16. And the first thing I would do is look at a lap compare profile. So I'm going to go over here, and by the way, it's this second blue area that we're looking at. So if I go to my lap compare profile, then I know it's this area here that we're looking at. So I see some difference in braking. And if I choose the measures and per lap color, I'll change the blue to yellow.
Yeah, that dark blue is probably a little hard to see, right?
So now you can see that a little bit better. And you can see the time difference here, right? So there was time gain coming in. And I can dig deeper in all these things, but because I know what area we're looking at, and if I view a track map, we'll show you. Map and show track map. All right, so this is this area. We got these two corners connected, 3 and 4, with 4 leading onto a straightaway here. So that's the area that we're focused on. So whenever I see an area like that, I wonder if the driver drove a different line, okay? So now we're gonna look at the GPS with those two lines mapped. It goes back to the red and blue for some reason, but if you uncheck and recheck, then you get the yellow and red. So this one I can zoom in on. So I'm going to do that. All right, so we know that the slower lap time had the fastest segment time through here, and it's quite a big difference in line, isn't it? So yeah. My question is okay, he drove a different line. How did that help him? Okay, so there's a really neat feature here. If you go to modify and then color channel, and I'm going to choose throttle.
Back to that internal battery being the one selected by default of the first time. Yeah.
Right. So initially, I've chosen throttle as my color channel, but it's not showing up yet. So what you have to do is you have to uncheck. So you have to remember these lines before unchecking. So now we have throttle. All right. And look at this. So in this case, he got to full throttle sooner coming using this line, but more importantly, he got the full throttle sooner here, leading onto this straight.
Yeah, so it's turning red way sooner, way earlier on the track.
Right. So I find this to be extremely helpful and just a really neat feature because you're not going to see the line when you're looking at the squiggly lines,
right?
And the line obviously can make a huge difference, and it. When I show this to a driver, he knows immediately that, hey, yeah, I need to be getting the car over to the left more so that I can take a later apex here and then get the full throttle sooner and maximize my speed going down that next straight. So.
Perfect. There's a quick question in there back when we were looking at max G and aero and some of the cars that folks will have a little bit more aero being applied to the car, and it says would it be more useful to create a math channel that changes the max G based on the mile per hour? Certainly. That is the power of math channels. If you have a situation that works for your particular type of car, yeah, tweak it to whatever it works for you. I think it's great that we do these kind of webinars where we show some things, but it's not the only way of doing it, right? It's just showing, we're trying to teach you the tool, and then you apply into your different differences that maybe will help you do it with your type of car. So, yeah, good question, Eldon. Thank you very much.
Another way to look at that, Roger, is if you create a scatter plot of lateral G's versus speed, you should see the lateral G's increasing as the car is going faster if it has more error.
Maybe we should. I think that's a great point. Ways of finding that aero enhancement. I think we can do a webinar on that in the near future.
Right.
Good question. When comparing laps, since we're looking at a GPS map, sometimes there is some shift in the GPS data over the course of different times. I think you're going to find that to be not very often anymore, especially with the newer GPS 08 antennas that we have. But every once in a while, you will see the entire thing has a bit of a shift to it, and then you can. There is no way to manually align that, so you almost have to look at it with your eye and say, okay, well, yeah, the whole thing is over. It looks like about 5 feet, but boy, if you visualize that, you can kind of see where the driver turned in a little bit later, or whatever it happens to be. So right now there is a difference, but occasionally, not nearly as often as what you might think, especially with the current equipment. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll see, some small variations, but again, I'm kind of trying to look at a big picture here.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it's something that is this apparent, then it's, there's no contest here. We know what happened,
Right, exactly.
So, all right.
Okay.
Well, that's about all I got there, Roger.
Perfect. I appreciate it. There was some notes in the chat box that I seen that as we're kind of tidying this up that talked about what you presented today, which was a graphical way. Really, it's almost by looking at things graphically, it's a whole different way than looking at them with the squiggly lines. Different people have different ways of learning, different ways of desiring to look at this information, and you've just given and showed with a whole bunch of different user profiles, and some we didn't even take a look at, but are being shared with you. That boy, there's different ways of looking at things, so we appreciate that. So go ahead, finish that up if you wish.
Yeah, somebody just put in the chat there that can you have a trail breaking math channel? If I want to see trail breaking, typically what I look at is one, the trace of the brake trace. I'll actually look at the rate of change of the brake trace, but to look at it on a track report, I'll use longitudinal G's, and I'll be able to see that those longitudinal G's go closer to the apex if that driver is trail braking. So I think that's a real easy way to look at trail braking. Perfect.
The thank you for all of that. Let's jump back out. Some of those user profiles, Robbie's already linked them. The data that we just looked at, of course, will be available to everybody in the description box of the YouTube video when it's placed up here in about an hour or so, including the math channels that Ray showed and the user profiles. So all of those will be available to you. So you'll have some places to start. And Ray, what Ray does as a service, and give him a holler. Well, we'll give you his email is up there in the upper left corner, but we'll give you some other that information again in a minute. But Ray does a lot of work for a lot of different people that contact him and say, okay, here's my specific instance. Hey, I want to look at the my combined G or something as I'm doing it. What's a good way to do that? Ray can build those and then ship those to you and help you guys out. So contact Ray for any further information on things like that. So that'll be helpful. Let's jump in, talk a little bit about training and support. Here's that YouTube page. If you are interested in viewing this later and downloading those things, if you didn't grab them out of the chat box for stuff that's coming up, that YouTube page is we're getting more and more subscriptions all the time. Please subscribe to that. You'll get notifications every time we put a YouTube video up, and all sorts of good information there. Not just these webinars that we're doing now, but lots of stuff from in the past that has been very, 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 very well used and powerful. So keep that in mind. If you're heading out to the track, boy, we're excited. We're starting to go to more and more track events now that we're starting to all be able to go out there. I know we're all we're all racers, and we're of that mindset that, boy, sitting around is not good for any of us. So we're all excited that we're ending up back at the track. So if you have any customer support needs, boy, look for us in our big Sprinter vans, or if we're not at the track that you're at, give us a holler at the 800 number there. We're always looking forward to chatting with you and helping you resolve any problems you might have, any questions you may have. The next webinar is we've heard you loud and well. I've gotten a lot of our polls and information have come up, and we've talked about some karting information. We're a big player in the karting data world, obviously, and so one of the things we're going to do is next Tuesday, actually, June 16th, not Thursday. I mistyped that. So next Tuesday, on the 16th, we're going to be doing analyzing a lap of kart data. If you're a sports car racer, don't be scared away, because the processes are exactly the same, but we want to do some of the little bit of a focus change maybe and do some on analyzing a lap of data in karting. Our co-host is going to be Eric Gunderson from Point Karting out of Colorado. He's been giving AIM seminars locally to his group of racers that are around there, on-site seminars. So that's been pretty cool, and so he's going to come join us, and we're gonna walk through a lap or two of data, one against looking at a lap alone and then comparing it against either a faster lap or a person that's about the same speed, and figure out where the speed differences are. And then we do the things we do, which is, what happened, where did it happen, and why did it happen? That's really what we always try to do in data. And Eric's going to give us a little bit of information of doing that with a cart. One of the things I'd like to do as we're kind of closing this one up is we always have this this poll here towards the end, and I'd appreciate it if you take a little bit of time and give me an idea of top three future webinar things, the ideas of where we should go. I study these after every one of these webinars, and we continue, and I'll share this one here with you in just a second. We're going to let this go for about a minute, and then we'll end it. So grab your answers fairly quickly. What we do and how we plan these out, we do have a pretty good little schedule, but we're also adjust them based on what we hear from everybody as part of these polls, and of course emails and phone calls and such as well. So I'm going to end that in about 5 or 10 seconds. So if you haven't voted, make sure you do that. Looks like most of you have voted from looking at the numbers real quickly, and there we got. So Eric's going to come in and give us an idea of that. So that's we have not done one specific to karting, but again, as I mentioned earlier, if you race sports cars or off-road trucks or UTVs or whatever it happens to be, don't get scared off that we're going to look at karting specific data, because the processes follow across all different forms of motorsports. So it'll be good. I'm going to go ahead and end that polling now, and let's share the results. Have everybody take a look at it. The number one, which is pretty typical for us, and it's what you guys own the hardware and you've got it kind of working, and you always want to add more value, and data analysis is the way that a lot of you want to do that. So that's at 81% of you selected data analysis. So that's a pretty big number. Track maps, we just went over track maps, and it's number two again. So I've chatted with Ray a little bit. We've done one here, and we've already chatted about maybe coming back, and we're going to do another one here probably in a week and a half, 2 weeks, 5 or 6 webinars down the road, where Ray will take some of this information and take it to an even more advanced level, plus some other things as well. So track maps are number two there, and fairly close. ECU protocols is right there in third. So that's something that we've actually started to some planning on doing an ECU protocol type of a webinar. It's probably going to be in the next 3 or 4 webinars, maybe next couple of weeks. So looking towards that. So perfect. I appreciate everybody voting in that. That always helps us out a ton. So I do thank you. And the last one is just kind of an overview. Again, some contact information for those of you that have want to contact Ray, there's a great way of doing it. There's his email address, mine as well. If you have some questions about some of the stuff that we covered here today, or have some feedback in the future for future webinars, those kind of things, there's my email address. Ray, you have anything else to add? We sure appreciate you being here, and you put a lot of work into that, and I know, and you're quite an asset to the community, and I know you help a lot of people. So, anything else you'd like to add as we're kind of closing this down?
Nope. Just thanks for having me. I thought that was a lot of fun. So look forward to the next one.
It's more fun than people know. So when I call upon some of you that are out there, that when I call upon you, as Ray says, it's a good time. We have a good time doing these, and a lot of people learn a lot of things. So we appreciate your efforts, Ray. So thank you again. Thanks to all the AIM guys in the background. There was a lot of questions that they answered as they were going, and had a good time in the chat as well. So perfect. I look forward to it. We see you. That'll end this one here for today on Thursday. Looking forward to seeing you all for the next one next Tuesday. Thanks everybody for coming, and talk to you soon.